What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be breaking down some college wide receiver versus DB one-on-ones at Sacramento State. So I hope this video helps you guys out. Hope it could teach you a few new things, but also, fellas, if you are a wide receiver and would like a daily training schedule to follow with the exact gym exercises and on-field drills that wide receivers should be doing, check out that very first link in the description below for our ultimate 8-week wide receiver workout plan. What you'll get access to is 500 plus wide receiver drills and gym exercises, all mapped out with the exact sets and reps for you guys to follow, all specifically organized into categories for those drills. So check out that very first link in the description below if you're interested in that, fellas. Let's get started. So now, first route we're going to be looking at here, this is going to be a dig route from like the slot or a reduced split from the outside versus an outside leverage off man coverage DB. So let's play this thing full speed, then we'll break it down. So this wide receiver comes off the ball, attacks the DB's leverage, gives him a move, and is able to get some separation. Throughout the course of this video, fellas, we're going to be showing some good wide receiver reps versus DBs, and then we're also going to be showing some good defensive reps for the DBs actually win the rep, and we're going to talk about what the wide receiver could have done better in that specific situation. So first things first, anytime that we're running routes, we have to identify two things about the DB, and that's how I pretty much come up with my plan. The first one is going to be his leverage. So what does leverage mean? Leverage is like kind of just pretty much where he is shaded. Is he shaded to the outside of me? Is he head up right in front of me? Or is he shaded to the inside? And that tells us a lot about the coverage that the DB is trying to play. So in this specific case, you could see that this wide receiver is lined up like kind of close to the hash right here. And this DB is lined up pretty much like outside, a little bit further outside of the hash than we are. So he has outside leverage. Now, you might think, why would a DB ever play outside leverage? And he's doing that for two specific reasons. One, he's expecting an outside breaking route. So maybe this wide receiver was lined up on the outside and he cut his split down, which essentially means he's lining up closer to like the offensive lineman. So why do wide receivers usually cut their split down? They cut their split down and run an outside breaking route. And we're going to discuss that later in this video with some outside breaking routes versus this specific coverage. But when you cut your split down, this DB's not an idiot. He's not going to just stay inside shade and give you all this space to work. He's going to stay outside leverage to try to make it hard on us, right? And usually what else he has, and I know it's one-on-ones, but in a real game scenario, he'd probably have some kind of safety help to the inside. So if this wide receiver did just want to take off and run, he'd be running right into the safety and this DB would be right on his hip. So that's what I know about his leverage. Now, in terms of what I do off the line, like coming up with my plan, whether I have to use a release or whether I got to close the space with the DB, all that's about is the distance he is away from me, right? So if he's outside shade, but he's pressed up right up on the line of scrimmage, not giving me any room to move, I got to give him a move off the line of scrimmage. I got to attack him outside and then take the inside release and get up into my route. But since he's off coverage, I don't got to worry about that. I still have to attack his leverage. His goal being outside leverage is still the same. It's just a different distance. And that's how I come up with the plan. So you see how he comes off the ball here, he attacks him. Now, the best way to get a DB to move, threaten him where he doesn't want you to go. And when he's outside leverage, he doesn't want us to go outside. So the goal would be to attack him to the outside. Let's attack his leverage. Let's try to go step on his toes and give him a fake like we're running an outside breaking route, stepping outside of his frame. Maybe you could use a move like a rocker step, which is essentially like a crossover at the top of the break to threaten that leverage because that's his sole responsibility, and that gives us some space over the middle. But also in a real game scenario, when you attack a DB's leverage, he is going to keep his leverage, right? He's taught do not give up the outside. So when he keeps his leverage and he's got a safety to the inside, that just creates a bigger window. And that bigger window for the quarterback is what I call a quarterback-friendly route. So that is how you guys have to structure your routes, especially against off coverage. You got to know leverage and you got to know distance when it comes down to coming up with your plan off the line of scrimmage. So let's play this again full speed one more time. Great job at this receiver attacking him and then being able to get space on that dig. All right, so now this next example here from this wide receiver, he's going to be running this like kind of 10-yard out, like inside stem 10-yard out, if you will, versus outside shade off man coverage again. Now, this route doesn't actually work. DB is able to lock this thing up, and we're going to talk about some of the mistakes that this wide receiver made on this play. So he comes off the ball, and I don't necessarily know why he's taking this like big inside stem because I think that that's just honestly flat out obvious that he's going to be running an outside breaking route versus this specific coverage. It's probably a part of their playbook, I would assume. But honestly, like whenever you have this outside leverage coverage, right? Like where this DB is playing, guys, if you have to run a route to the leverage like a 10-yard out or maybe like a corner, whatever the case may be, our goal needs to be either to stack over the top of the DB if I have room, or to get him to flip his hips. So what do I mean by flip his hips? So when you guys come to the inside right here and he's pushing up vertical, you see how this DB's just staying patient. He's staying square. Hips and shoulders, everything is just square to this wide receiver. He's keeping his leverage. If he wanted to run an inside breaking route, he knows that you would be running right into that quote-unquote safety help. And one-on-ones is a little different. And one-on-ones, I think a DB would be more willing to give up this like inside stem post way over the middle, because in a real game, that's not a realistic route, rather than get beat to the outside. Now, this wide receiver, again, he pushes to the inside. Now he starts attacking the inside shoulder and inside hip on this route. I would say that's where you want to go straight away off the ball. You have outside leverage coverage. Again, his goal is to protect the outside. But again, he still doesn't want to get beat deep over the top, maybe on a deep route. He doesn't want to get beat deep on like a quick post with some space between the safety and the DB. So you still can get his hips to flip. You just have to be a salesman. But this big inside stem here, I just don't think doesn't help anybody out. I understand it's probably a part of the playbook. But when he gets to this break point, you see how this DB's still patient. He's still square. He's not fully committed with his hips yet. So when he makes this break to the outside, DB is exactly where we don't want him to be. He's right to the side of the break. So what I would say to do here in this specific scenario is try to get a little bit skinnier with the DB, right? You never want to try to run away from this DB, even if you have an inside stem like in this case, and leave this big gap between the two of you. Because when you have this big gap and you try to break back to an out route, back to a corner route, you're running right into him. Guys, we have to run right at his inside hip, right at his inside shoulder, because when I want to make that break to the outside, I want him right next to me. And I want him right next to me so I could either stack, or if he's right next to me, I could use my inside hand and swat him by on his shoulder, on his hip, and slip under him. I don't want to be that guy who just tries to run around him, because this is going to be the end result. That DB is going to be right where we don't want him to be, and that is an easy play for him to get hands on the ball, knock the ball out, or even pick the ball. Right? So we have to make sure, fellas, we are getting skinny and we are putting ourselves in a position to get separation whenever I have a route, like an outside breaking route versus outside leverage coverage. Now, let me ask you this. Why wouldn't he want to come off the ball and try to like attack him and then go to the out route right now? Because honestly, that would be forcing the route to the leverage, right? You never want to force a route versus a specific DB's leverage. If he's outside leverage, chances are I'm probably not going to be able to just outside release and get around it. Because remember what we said, when we had to run that dig route versus outside leverage, why did we want to attack his leverage to the outside? Because that would move him, and that gives you more room inside. So if your goal is just to attack him and then give him a quick fake and then go to the outside, if you attack him right here, he's just going to keep that leverage, and then you're going to end up running the out route right into him. You cut down field space that you have, and that's not good for the quarterback. That's not enough room for him to throw you open. You have to try to split this dude in half. Go right at his shoulder, right at his hip, and try to flip his hips deep to a fade route if you're in the middle of the field, or at least get skinny so you could create that space at the top. So let's watch this again, full speed one more time. Again, inside stem, I understand that, but we have to make sure that we get skinny eventually, even with the inside stem on the route. Okay, so now, next example we're going to be looking at here is kind of a goal line fade route versus this inside shade off man coverage. So this should be an easy one for you guys, but this wide receiver does end up making a mistake that is crucial, and that's what gets this play actually locked up. But again, remember, we come up to the line of scrimmage, we have to think about two things in regards to how you structure your plan of action, how you structure your route, what are you going to do on your route? Remember, it's leverage and then distance between us, right? So this wide receivers maybe got about 7 or 8 yards of space, and the DB is inside leverage, right? He's inside shade, so that means he has inside leverage. His goal is to stop a post, stop a dig, stop a slant, anything inside breaking, force everything to the outside. So if I have to run a fade route, a lot of guys, what they would do is they see this inside coverage, they might come off the ball, give a little move, and they just go run to the back pylon. That is exactly what this DB wants you to do. He wants you to go just take off and go run to the pylon, because that's where he's trying to force you. He's going to get, if you just take off and go, he's going to get right into your hip, squeeze you to that sideline, and that quarterback's not going to have that much room. especially if we're in the middle of the field and we have open space. So what do you think you want to do off the ball? We want to attack him. We want to threaten him. We want to try to move him to the inside to give me more space to the outside. Very, very similar to remember when we had to run that dig route versus outside shade. If the route is away from the leverage, you want to go attack his leverage. So let's play this full speed one more time, or full speed first time. So this wide receiver, he does it. It's not a bad move, and it's like the right type of move, I guess you could say. He comes off the ball, gives a little hezzy skip, gives a hard cut to the inside and attacks him. However, I think he needs to close a little bit more space with this DB. And that's the mistake that this wide receiver makes. He does everything right, but remember, you could have the concept of the route down, but the technique of the route could be off, and that is what could get us locked up. A great route runner, fellas, or a great receiver, you have to be able to have both. You got to understand how to run your route, but you also have to understand the technique that goes into selling the route, selling the move that we are trying to work. So when he comes off the ball here, he attacks, he gives a little hezzy skip to change tempo. But when you throw this crossover move and there's about a yard, maybe 2 yards of space between you and the DB, even if we get him to hesitate for a second, you still got to get to this back pylon. And since there's a gap of space there, he has the advantage to be able to cut off the angle and still get to us and make a play. Now, do I think this ball was underthrown a little bit? Absolutely. I think that ball needs to be thrown right to that back pylon, and I think that wide receiver would actually have a chance. But still, fellas, if you don't close the distance and you don't close the space, you're giving this DB a chance to recover. Now, think of it like this. Let's say it was like an open field fade. Let's say we were on the 50-yard line and you wanted to attack him and give him a move. You still got to try to like stack him. You still want to try to get over the top to where this DB is trailing your back hip. So you have to step on his toes, guys. You have to close the distance. When you throw this crossover, he should be like right on the goal line. Make him think you are running a slant, because if he's right on the goal line and he gets him to jump, think about how easy that would be to gain a step on him. Think about how easy it would be to run by him because you are close to him. You closed the cushion. But if you leave that space and you leave that gap between the two of you, we will not be able to create as much space. So let's play this again, full speed one more time. Again, right idea, fellas, right concept on the route, but we also have to know the technique behind it to create that space. All right, fellas, I really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. Always appreciate the feedback. It's always great to hear from you guys. And again, fellas, if you would like an 8-week wide receiver on-field and gym workout scheduled to follow, check out that very first link in the description below. We'd love to get you on that. 500-plus wide receiver drills and gym exercises for you to follow. Again, very first link in that description below. I'll see you guys next time.